Synapse team came to me after I wrote a scathing little article in the TVBJ about fan experience and wanted to entertain a discussion on innovations in sports. And I want to be true to what the Synapse Summit is all about, which is what? Technology and innovation. We've heard that repeatedly. But let's be clear that technology and innovation is not the same thing. Anybody see Jeff Hoffman yesterday? In his keynote? Yeah, it was awesome. And he said repeatedly, I'm going to say this verbatim, technology is not innovation. Innovation is simply finding new and better ways of doing things. So you see the sports franchises putting big money into technology, the big screens and the interactive apps and the frictionless transactions, but is that making the fan experience better? I don't know. It's part of the conversation today. Write this down, look it up later. My favorite success story in sports right now is the Savannah Bananas. They're leading the industry. Yeah, you know them? Follow their story, it's so cool. They're leading what the fan experience is all about. They're doing it right. And sometimes it's technology and sometimes it's just human-to-human interaction. And you might think, big deal, but what they've experienced is consecutive sellouts since their inaugural season, since game one. Every single game sells out. They're doing it right. So what can our team, Tampa Bay sports teams, do to create must-attend home games? All right, let's meet the panel. Panel, you ready to meet the panel? Okay. So get your apps out. I'm going to have you look up their bios because I'm not going to read them. They're very impressive, but that would be boring. So I'm going to give you a little fun fact that you would have no way of knowing. Let's start with Sari. Come on out here, Sari. Sari is a 7-time fantasy football champion. That's impressive, because I have 2 under my belt and I've been doing it since the 1900s. She also tells me that she once gave Dan Patrick a concussion. You'll have to ask her about that later. Sari is the director of esports at Full Sail University. Full Sail is leading the industry in esports. Let's welcome Sari Kitelyn. Lizzie. Come on over here, Lizzie. Lizzie tells me that she is currently learning to curl like on ice, she said. And she wants you to know it's much harder than it looks. Girl, it looks hard. What are you talking about? Okay. She's the senior VP for United Soccer Leagues all across the USA. Lizzie Seedhouse. Roberto.
No. Me next.
Who was the teapot? I wonder. Fine, Titus. I had a whole choreography here.
Well, I'm about diversity. Brothers don't go last.
All right, Titus. Titus, I didn't think could surprise me with a fun fact, but he did. Titus loves to cook. He loves to cook so much that he hopes to have his own cooking show one day on the Food Network or Netflix.
He loves to eat.
Oh, I see your Instagram, boy. How do you not weigh 400 pounds? I don't know. So he's a WWE superstar, a youth mentor, speaker, author, your Grand Marshal of the Gasparilla Night Parade, Titus O'Dew! All right, now I have to go back in my notes. Page. Rob. I love this man. I do. I've got like a sports crush on you. If you don't know Rob Higgins' story, he and his team are the ones responsible for bringing Super Bowl here. He and his team are responsible for bringing WrestleMania here in April. Any of the big sporting events, that's Rob and his team. Rob is so committed to taking one for Team Tampa Bay that he was once hit by a bus while bidding on an event. We'll have to ask him about that later. This is your rock star sports commissioner and mine, Rob Higgins. All right, so I got my 4 questions. Start thinking about your questions. Listen to what they're talking about and come up with stuff. Robin, where's my Miss Robin with the red hair? Robin's out here and she's going to be looking for your hands so we can execute your questions as quick as we can. I'm going to start with Lizzie, if you want to hand Lizzie the question, the microphone. All right, so it's kind of a long question, so I want to set it up right. My observation is that baseball and football attendance is trending down. I mean, we see it here in Tampa Bay. Empty seats. Sucks, right? We don't like that. Soccer and wrestling, as a matter of fact, is rising. Right? Soccer is the undisputed #1 spectator sport in the world. How are you doing it? And what can football, baseball, and other traditional sports learn about true fan engagement and creating more raving fans like you guys are doing with soccer?
That was a long question. Thank you for that. So yeah, I think soccer in America right now is definitely on the rise. We've got a World Cup coming in about 6 years. So definitely on the global stage. And on top of that, the women's national team is seeing a lot of success, right? And I think when you have success in your sport on a global level, it really inspires a lot of other people to be involved and participate. So when I look at soccer and think, okay, like participation's on the rise, there are 4.2 million children registered with our soccer federation that participate in sports. And then on top of that, like beyond just like a ton of participation, it's really, really easy to play soccer. So when I was growing up, and I'm from England, if you can't tell by my accent yet, but I used to play soccer all around my house. Like I would find anything that was half round to kick around, and I would set little goalposts and I would just play. So a pair of my dad's socks folded up would be a soccer ball, or an orange, or a rugby ball, because I didn't know how to play rugby, but I wanted to play soccer. So soccer is just really easy sport for kids to get into. We use your jumpers or jackets as goalposts, so you can just go play. And I think I look at other sports where there's a lot of equipment, there's a high barrier to entry in terms of cost. That really kind of can set other sports back. And I actually had a question for the audience. If anyone could raise their hand that's played organized soccer before, show of hands. Well, so not as many as I was hoping. And who's played like organized baseball or organized American football? So, yeah. So like slightly less, right? And so I think baseball too. Anyone played organized baseball? There we go. And even less, right? So I think soccer there just beat out everyone by about twice as much participation. And we're going to continue to see that to grow. I think the other thing, Jodi, to the second part of your question about what's soccer doing differently, we are a challenger sport in this country. So we have to think a little bit differently about how we approach it, because we're not making as much money on our media rights deals and our sponsorships. And the USL is a challenger league in a challenger sport. So we have to be really smart and innovative on how we can engage fans, right? Because we go into big markets like Phoenix, Dallas, San Antonio, that have all these major league teams and sports, and we have to separate ourselves from the noise. Something that I think the USL clubs do really well is that they bring the fans in and make the club their own. So we really focus on like supporting local soccer. One story I have to tell is our team in San Diego. So what our clubs do really well, we've announced 2 or 3 new teams a year on the professional landscape. And they do a great job of bringing the fans in and talking to the fans and understanding what the fans want out of that team in their community. So in San Diego, we had our team get and do focus groups, 4 or 5 meetings at a brewery with fans that wanted to bring professional soccer to San Diego, but they want to know what this team meant to them and what the brand should be as well. So what they did is that they had their meetings and they came out with the name San Diego Loyal, because a lot of San Diego fans felt betrayed and mistreated or abandoned, if you will. So for me, as a branding and marketing person, I really don't like the name Loyal, but it doesn't matter because I'm not San Diego. And to prove a point, we have a couple of fans in San Diego that have their team's brands tattooed on their body, right? And the team hadn't kicked a ball yet, no coach, no players, but there's a brand and a purpose and a meaning. We really bring that, and I don't think there's anyone walking around with a Vipers tattoo, even though they've already played a game and they're going to have great attendance in a couple of weeks. So I think for us, it's all about like making it local and really embracing the fans to make it their own club.
The things he comes up with. And I can only imagine that there are a lot of cities that would like to have you as their sports commissioner. Please don't go. So my question is in 2 parts. Number 1, what do you love about Tampa and what do you see here that keeps you here as our sports commissioner? Thank you. And the second part of the question is, tell us about some of the bids that you lost and why we've lost them, and retrospectively, how we won some of the ones that we won. So first, what do you love about Tampa?
I don't love Titus touching me, and he's touched me for like the last few
Really close. I'm so sorry.
It's as awkward for them as it is for us, so that can stop. No, I was born and raised. Yeah. Okay.
Return my text.
Because you always want to go to eat. All right, man, stop. I'm just a Tampa kid. I was born and raised in Tampa. Have loved every second of living here my entire life. And while others, and there's no problem with going off to school and going out to wherever you want to go, like to me, Tampa always felt right. I mean, I just remember where you couldn't go, furthest north you would go is Tampa Palms, like when they built Tampa Palms, and that felt like New York City. And then you drive a little further a few years later, and there was Hunter's Green. And now you go out to Wiregrass and everything north. I mean, the community has just grown so much. And So to play a small part in helping tell our story of growth. I mean, you look at this next Super Bowl for us, and in 361 days, who's counting? It's a story of how far we've come since 2009. You look at how far we've come just in the last few years, but since 2009. But it's not just about telling that story of how far we've come, it's about where we're going. And you look at where we're going as a community. I mean, the opportunity is truly limitless. So it's something that's exciting each and every day to be a small part of. We've got teammates in the back, Claire Lessinger and Jenna, who are phenomenal. And then I think the key differentiator for us too as a community is when we get an event, everybody reaches out either as part of the bid process or right after we're awarded and says, what can we do to help? How are we going to raise the bar? Whereas in other communities, all respect to them, there they say, how's that event going to help us? How's that going to monetize for me individually or for our company, or what does that mean to us? Whereas here, it's that true Team Tampa Bay spirit, and we're so lucky to have that.
All right, so don't leave ever. So tell us about one of the bids that you lost and why we lost.
Well, I will say this, like, we absolutely hate losing, but we also understand there's lessons and losses. And so a lot of the times we see it as a long-term play versus some sort of short-term, knee-jerk quick fix. I'll give a couple. The College Football Playoff National Championship, its very first year had been rumored for a long time to go to Dallas. So when they sent it out to bid, there was only 2 cities that actually responded, Dallas and our community. And everybody looked at us like we were crazy for doing that. But we said, anytime we have a chance to tell our story, we're gonna go in and do it. And we got a lot closer to Dallas than anybody ever thought. And we were able to set our story off from the very beginning. So then Dallas got it, years 2 and 3 went out to bid. We had a head up. Every city in the country then went after it. But because we were brave and went in and took that advantage of that opportunity, it led us to that. This Super Bowl, we didn't get awarded this Super Bowl the very first time. 2019, 2020, and 2021, we were up against Atlanta, Miami, and LA. Atlanta, $1 billion stadium. Miami, $500 million renovation. LA, multi-billion dollar stadium. We got invited to go bid. We went in and told our story, and it went about like we anticipated. While we had a compelling pitch and did everything we could to bring it home. 2019 went to Atlanta, 2020 went to Miami, and 2021 went to LA. And then all of a sudden, LA's construction started to fall behind with their stadium. And the NFL turned to us as part of it because we had told our story. So I would just encourage everybody in the audience, you each have great stories to tell. So tell your story. When you get done telling it, tell it again. Never turn down an opportunity, no matter what the odds are against you to tell your story, because you never know where it'll lead. So a lot of our greatest losses, and those aren't easy to take, ended up leading us to some of our greatest wins.
Do you have one favorite crazy pitch that you did that I don't even care if it resulted in a winner?
Well, yeah, actually, we've had a bunch of them. Then they're all our favorite. It goes back to that introduction. I did get hit by a bus.
Oh, yeah.
We were bidding on an event. It's an event that I'm not going to name publicly because I don't want the statute of limitations of this potential lawsuit to end up. No, I'm just kidding. We were bidding on an event that was out for 2 years, and we went to scout it as part of it, and we were on the way to it, and we were waiting on the shuttle to then go to the arena as part of it, and I saw a family that were taking their picture, and it was the dad taking the picture of the wife and couple kids, and I said, hey, can I just take your picture, and that way you all 4 can be in it. And I don't have that big a heart. It was just like out of character for me. And I did it, and I was kind of on the edge of the sidewalk, and this bus pulls in the mirror, like those gigantic mirrors, smokes me in the back of my head. And I go to...
About the bus.
I start swirling. I hand the guy back his phone. I turn to my coworker with me, and I said, I just got hit by a blank bus. And And so fast forward, I end up going to the arena, I would say pretty substantially concussed at that point. And the event organizer waited for me at the arena doors and basically said, "What year do you want?" And I said, "We want them both." We ended up getting one, but maybe we would have gotten none if I didn't get hit by the bus. Who knows?
All right, we'll go to Titus, so you're not last.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm looking out for you, man.
Happy Black History Month.
Happy there. All right, so as an athlete, we done? So as an athlete, I'm curious about your interpretation of the fan experience, because I have to think it's very different. It's clearly very different between wrestling and football, and you've done both. So what's that like for you? I mean, transitioning as a footballer to a wrestler. I mean, I think back to Hulk Hogan. I mean, didn't he kind of lead that whole thing when he put his fingers up to his ear and the crowd went crazy? And that was kind of the birth of fan engagement for wrestling as it is now. So where do you see football, baseball, learning from non-traditional sports like wrestling to create these frenzied fans?
So I think, to her point, obviously soccer from a fan experience is it's on a whole nother level. And I've seen it overseas, the engagement. And so with WWE, it's the same. You know, I feel like we have the same type of fan base. If you go to a soccer game in Europe, and then you go to a WWE show in Europe, it's the same type of vibe. Like they're singing in the crowd, they're yelling out all kinds of stuff. They know the storylines, they know the players, they know the backstories of the players, they know the backstories of the players' families. You know, they'll mention all types of stuff. So for me, I've only seen from a football perspective or a sports perspective, baseball, basketball, whatever, I've only seen every once in a while a heckler. Whereas you got thousands of hecklers in WWE. When you are speaking on a mic like we are right now, you have, 25, 30, 40,000 people saying, "What?" if you're a bad guy, And every time you finish stopping there, what, and that's aggravating as hell. That's like a kid, but it's to throw off, and it's the fan engagement. When you see Daniel Bryan coming out and he's throwing his hands in the air and he's saying yes, 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 and all of a sudden you see a whole arena full of basketball fans doing the exact same thing in a Michigan State basketball game. That type of, or any NFL game, you see guys, doing the championship title reign, especially with the Packers or et cetera. People doing the people's elbow. I mean, it's just, from a football perspective, like I never got a chance to see that because we were always busy making up our own celebrations. But in wrestling, watching fans and seeing the fan engagement, like you can go to any WWE show not knowing anything and sitting in a row, and the little kid that's 8 years old and the old woman that may be 90 years old, sorry, you do remind me so much. As you can see, we have a very difficult relationship with time, but it's loving. So
it's a love-hate
relationship. Yeah.
It's like 7.
He only hates me. Yeah, he only hates me when it's time to go eat and he has to pay the bill. But you can sit next to two complete strangers and they'll tell you exactly what's going on. Oh, we're born that guy or that guy. You cannot know anything. And I think it's the same way with soccer. But in basketball, like in football, players change teams all the time, coaches, etc. So only the people that are diehard sports fans from that organization are gonna know like the ins and outs of the changes of the teams. It's just like, because of free agency or whatever. But in WWE, it's a global thing. We're shown in 170 countries weekly and broadcasted in 35 or 40 different languages. And so I always tell people I could have played in the NFL for 20 years, been a 5-time Super Bowl champion, and not got nowhere, have received anywhere near the I guess, stature and presence that I do in 1 year of being on WWE television. Because you're going to places like Australia, Australia loves soccer. They love WWE. They don't know anything about American football. You go to China and Japan, two very different crowds, very different types of interaction. Japan is very, very much so like Americans. So when they're wild and they're loud and stuff like that, whereas in China, it's like going to church, you know? It literally is. You're sitting there and you're imagining it was the weirdest thing to me ever, going to China the first time, because it's like you body slam somebody and they're like, ooh, and then it's and then they clap, and then they go back silent. So it's just like, we don't do it. So, but you learn how to entertain, and I think that's why sports in general, the fan interaction has gotten so much better, is because people have found entertaining ways to engage. If you come to a Tampa Bay Lightning game, it's not just what's going on the ice. It's tons of engagement, things to get going on, 50-50 raffle, concerts, t-shirts going blown. It's just so much stuff that you feel like you're at an experience, and that's what fans want. They don't understand the intricacies of sports. Like, you might hit somebody that go to their first basketball game and see somebody slam dunk and be like, touchdown! No, it's slam dunk, you know? So that's the thing, is that fan interaction is very important and it's very key for us, because it moves the needle in more ways than just the box office. We have 1 billion social media followers on YouTube. We have over 1 billion subscribers. When you have presence like that, that's power, and which generates into eventually dollars, whether it be through advertising or different, engagements and ads and things like that. So the fan experience, like she said, and I keep going back to her because I can clearly see it, most clearest with soccer, with us being a little bit behind the 8 ball, whereas they don't have the money or the resources to play all these other organized sports.
And yet, WrestleMania is predicted to bring in more money to Tampa Bay than the Super Bowl.
And it will.
Right? Crazy.
About 60% of our audience is not even from the United States of America.
So you're doing some stuff right. I don't know. I just noticed that Tom Brady just started his Instagram thing. So he's getting video of his family and all that, letting people know the person behind the GOAT. And he's behind the times. It's like they're catching up, but they're learning from people that are like you, that are leading those industry trends. Because we fans want to be engaged. We want to feel like we're part of something. We don't want to sit back and spectate anymore. That's where we are in 2020. That's where all industries are. Consumers are driving the trends. We're telling companies what we want. We're giving you the data with our cell phones and our Alexas. You're welcome. What you choose to do with that data is going to make or break you. So all right.
I will say 2 things. Number one, as many people may or may not know, WWE is responsible for 2 of the greatest things that ever happened in sports history.
I just wrote
one, aside from that, one, the pay-per-view model. WWE is the one that kind of instituted that years ago with the very first WrestleMania. Closed caption. They did WrestleMania, the first one they did it in movie theaters, and then the pay-per-view model was developed off of that. Secondly, the way you see sports shot today, and it's great that they're back. The XFL, the first time around, the jib cams, the in-game experiences and sideline reporting and all that stuff was all developed with the XFL. So as crazy as my boss, Vince McMahon, may seem at times, he is a crazy genius when it comes to marketing, and he's a visionary for a lot of things. So.
He's ahead of his time, about 10 years ahead, unfortunately. So we are running out of time for questions, so let's get over to you, Sari. Is esports going to take over traditional sports, or do you think that there's a hybrid model that the two will come together?
I definitely feel there's a hybrid model. I don't think it's going to take over. It's a different sort of audience, but I do think there's a lot that the esports industry can learn from the traditional sports audience development, and I do think there's some things that the traditional sports audience perspective can really kind of start taking away from where esports has grown. Just to kind of start at the beginning, for those who don't know, esports is literally competitive video gaming. Everything we were ever told not to do in our parents' basements is now making 13-year-old kids hundreds of thousands of dollars. No regrets. So the biggest thing I think that is really happening with esports that is fascinating, especially from an audience development perspective, is the lines are kind of blurred between the fan and the player. They're almost one and the same. So the way all esports areas are set up, I'll give an example. We just hosted Bolts Gaming a week and a half ago, for an esports tournament. And it was 4 17 to 20-year-old kids from all over the world, Finland, Sweden, Canada, US, that won an online tournament and were flown here to compete for money in the NHL hockey video game. And so the great thing is, in addition to them watching their favorite players from the Bolts Gaming professional team, they're also able to participate in a Bolts Gaming actual tournament. In addition to that, the aspect of live streaming via Twitch, Mixer, now YouTube's really getting into the game. In addition to being able to follow your favorite esports athletes, your favorite esports teams, international teams, you're also able to watch them practice, and not just watch them practice, but engage with them at practice. So things like asking questions, commenting back and forth. The chat feature is a really huge and legit part of what live streaming is doing. In addition, there's just as good a chance that you'll get paired against them. So an example that's kind of happened with us a lot is the #1 Super Smash Brothers player in the world lives in Orlando. And he hosts a ton of events and he hosts a ton of tournaments. We've hosted quite a few with him here, and he also plays all around the world, every single week, every single weekend. So when he hosts a tournament at any point or plays in any tournament for Super Smash Brothers, which all of the pro athletes do, a 16-year-old kid can get paired against him very easily. It happens all the time. There's no preset rankings, there's no preset brackets. You're sitting down and you're playing in a straight up standard traditional bracket structure that will pair whoever against whoever. And so in addition to these gamers being fans of their favorite e-athletes, they're also being able to play with them, to watch them, to interact with them, to engage with them. There's no real dividing differentiation from a fan perspective between professional and amateur. I don't know how long that's going to sustain, but I think that's what's really caused the industry itself to grow as quickly and as fast as it has.
Fabulous. Okay, we have 15 minutes left, and I want this to be all about you guys. So while I get over to the first question, Rob, tell me something that people don't know about the Super Bowl, please.
I would mention a couple things real quick as you make your way. Our Business Connect initiative that we do in conjunction with the NFL is basically geared towards playing matchmaker with a lot of the NFL signature events, and their spending with minority-owned, female-owned, LGBTQ-owned, and veteran-owned local businesses. The deadline to apply for that is this coming Friday, so if you have a business that fits in that category, if you go on TampaBayLV.com, you can apply to be a part of that program. A lot of great professional development in addition to real contract opportunities. There's between 700 and 800 businesses registered. About 250 will be selected. There's a handful of business lines that I would say that we're still probably light from an application standpoint, such as barricades, portalettes, white glove service, Claire, any others? Field turf. Field turf is another one. So if you have any friends that have businesses that fit that description, that are local, we're trying to keep as much of the local money here and prop up the small business community. The other quick one is the Super Bowl is an all-hands-on-deck effort. We'll utilize about 10,000 volunteers as part of it, our community ambassadors. We'd love to have you be a part of that. You can go on to TampaBayLV.com and register or submit your interest to be a part of it. That program will roll out later on this spring. First question.
Thank you. Name and company and your question and who's it for?
My name is Leah Ferretti with Tampa General Hospital Foundation. This question is for you, Mr. Higgins.
Rob, please.
Okay, Rob.
I'm not a little old lady like Titus described me.
You're also not an eight-year-old like he was also described. It is a bucket list item to go to the Olympics. Is that something you would ever see coming to Tampa Bay, or even like a Tampa Bay-Orlando connection together, since it's only an hour away, or are we way too small?
Winter or summer? Because they both have about the same odds. think what we've tried to do is really go after events that play to our community's strengths, like the right size events, the events with the right return on investment for our community. So we look at it from an economic impact in terms of the tourism, a social impact in terms of the social legacy initiatives that you'll see with a lot of our events, and then the marketing visibility we receive. Hosting the Olympics in terms of the investment that it commands from a community probably isn't the right fit for us. Now we continue to talk with community leadership about evaluating opportunities that come up, but we really have to look for events that are going to play into those 3 blanks in terms of checking all those boxes, and at this point in time that one doesn't necessarily hit for us. It's a great question though.
If you have a question, look to make eye contact with me or that vivacious redhead Robin back here, and we'll get you up next. Name and company, and who's it for?
Yeah, Gabe Gilligan, Exponential. I'm actually an Auslander. I'm from Orlando. I apologize. Yeah, I just wanted to say, obviously with esports to soccer to WWE, as you kind of go up and down the food chain, I'm very curious what you do in a sport in terms of engagement, watching the other sports. Obviously, WWE can learn a lot, and I know you're watching esports very closely, and soccer, bluntly being in the middle, you're watching both sides for your engagement in the States. Just curious from all 3 of you, what are the inspirational things you look at and immediately grab at and say, that's something from a fan engagement experience I'm going to take and learn more about?
So I know from esports perspective and video gaming, obviously we put out video games with WWE for years, but now we have our own up, down, down station that has surpassed 1 million subscribers. There are a lot of guys that are on Twitch, and they're using that now as well as a secondary stream of income, not only just for the company, but also for themselves. They have huge followings, and so we've learned a lot from the esports, and so much to the point that like a lot of us individually are trying to put that same power source into the hands of kids and establishing esports teams and things like that. When they're selling out arenas, and it's a $1 trillion industry, there's no sense in not looking to see what they're doing. And like she said, it's great because it's a little bit of everything for everybody. You have athletes that are involved, you have people that have no athletic ability at all, but they will sit there and they will smash any athlete that comes up on them to play a video game. 13-year-old kids are making tons of money at an early age, so what's college for at the end of the day when they're making that kind of money? But it's just, and then with soccer for us, we learn a lot with their merchandising, and as far as merchandising is concerned, sorry, I have no responsibility for what's going on in the background. But from understanding that, we try to put out, actually I think we put out too much merchandise sometimes, but when you go over to European, they want stuff to wear, they want stuff to engage with themselves and stuff. So all of our ideas, I feel like, are, for the most part, brought from overseas over to here. And if you look at sport, if you look at entertainment as a whole, most people that make it big in music, they start over in the UK and overseas. And if it's good over there, then they bring it over here to the States.
Anybody else want to comment?
Me looking at both sides of the aisle, it's using athletes as brands, right? I think that's something that soccer in Europe does really well. Cristiano Ronaldo is highest paid player in the world, but he makes more money from his Instagram account than he does from playing professional soccer. If I look at athletes like Titus and esports athletes, you need to look at what are they doing that connects in with that fan, so that fan's now tied to that athlete and that sport for life. So we work on accessibility of our players. Being a lower league, it's a little bit easier. We have these big personalities that are, unavailable. So we do a lot with our players in the communities, very much like I'm sure both sides, at least in WWE does, but we really look to try to have those meaningful impacts around our communities, and we do a lot on the club side in terms of having our clubs sign homegrown players. I think that's something that soccer is really good at, especially Major League Soccer, but our clubs as well. So our club in Birmingham, their first player was a homegrown signing that was born and raised there, and I think when you can have that connection to a player, you then, by extension, have the connection to the club and the sport too. So that's what I look at when I look at esports and WWE.
I think from our perspective, we actually have the lowest retirement age due to, I wish I was joking, due to the slowing down of your reaction time and hand-eye coordination. Most esports athletes are fully retired by the age of 26, which means that the opportunity for the growth of esports from these former athletes is really coming strong. Their careers, their full-on careers in the industry are starting while they're in their 20s. And the more important part of that means that all of our professional athletes are falling younger than the age of 26. And so the idea of personal brand development is top-notch. It's the number one most important thing that we can teach and that they can learn from and that we can benefit from as far as pulling things from especially WWE, what they do from a storytelling perspective is probably the number one thing we pull from and learn from, and I think the number one thing that most people can learn from. Again, giving an identity, but also being able to create and craft that story is super important. And the connection and engagement from the soccer perspective to the team and the genre, knowing that the players might turn over and switch teams and turn over quickly, it doesn't ever seem to impact soccer. And from the esports perspective, we're going to have that very repetitively because of the young retirement age. So that's really where we pull from both of those areas.
All right, one more question. We have 5 minutes left. That went so fast. Name, company, and who was your question for?
Sure. My name is Matthew Cole with Galinsky Enterprises. I just want to thank you all first for what you do for the community, for enriching the lives. I'm not just native Floridian, grew up in Clearwater, Buccaneers wrestling, but also enriching the lives of our children. So thank you all for that. Question for Rob. Mom always told me the answer is no unless you ask. Can I have a Super Bowl ticket?
That's a no. We're out of internships, we're out of national anthem opportunities, we're out of halftime show opportunities. Anything else, Claire, I'm missing? No. But thank you.
Did we not see that coming? Did you not see that coming? I have one more burning question that really needs to be addressed, the elephant in the room. Sports betting in 2020 in Florida, where are we with that? Who wants to take that? Lizzie?
Yeah, so I'm the league expert on sports betting, and I manage all of our licensing and rights deals around that, around video and data. So I've been following along state to state. USL has 47 professional clubs across, I don't know how many states anymore, about 30, I think. So to get everyone up to speed, sports betting in the US is legal on a state-by-state basis, and every state's running at their own pace, going through legislative sessions. And all the rules are going to be different from state to state. So Florida recently entered a bill that would allow for mobile sports betting, and I'm sure it's going to be rushed to get pushed through with the Super Bowl coming up. Last Super Bowl, a couple of weeks ago, about 26 million people bet on that game and wagered about $6.8 billion, right? So there's a lot of money on the table, and it's still new to a lot of sports entities and stakes in the US, so it's going to be a big money grab. But I think in terms of innovation and fan experience, it's going to change the way we all watch the game and enjoy it, whether you're at home watching on TV. The XFL is going to have odds on their ESPN broadcast, which will be a first for a lot of
The XFL
sports.
had the over-under listed in their graphics this weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's
And
here.
that's it, right? And
It's
that's
here.
new. The NBA's tried it a couple times earlier in the year, or earlier last year, but no one's really breaking into that space, so it's going to change your fan experience. But then also in the game, we're talking about the Savannah Bananas, and that they don't care, right? If fans don't care if they win or lose, right? The soccer fan's very different. They're not going to want to put their head down for a couple of minutes and place a bet because they might miss the only goal in the game. So I think from sport to sport, it's going to be difficult to gauge, and the mechanisms to get people's money is going to have to be different from sport. And then just obviously pay attention to like the fan attention and how they interact with the game. But it will increase engagement. If you bet on a game, you're 16 times more likely to watch it.
Oh my God, yes. That's the engagement
So
we're
we'll
talking
make it
about.
happen.
It's happening. It's happening. It could happen this year in Florida. Rob, do you have any interest in commenting on this as far as Super Bowl 2021?
I wouldn't bet on me giving you an answer here, Jodi. No, I mean, it's obviously something we continue to monitor. It's certainly out of our hands. We'll continue to see how everything trends to see then how we would be involved. I think we try to focus on the things that we know, black and white, are definitively going to happen. What's crazy, I would just say, is if you look back at '09, who would have thought everything that now from an issue or opportunity standpoint exists for 2021 since our last Super Bowl. So like Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, drone airspace. You would think that we were like, back then we were the Flintstones and now we're the Jetsons. And it's hard to predict a year from now what technology and what'll be in existence a year from now. So we naturally try to make sure we're as proactive as possible, but there is some reaction involved just based off of how quickly things evolve.
That's great, Lee. Well, we're down to our last 3 minutes. Any parting words, anything you want to get in and promote? WrestleMania?
I will selfishly, before I turn it over to Thad here, I would want to recognize, I mentioned earlier about how when we get Super Bowls, people then reach out. There's a couple in the crowd I just want to recognize. Renee Gallant and Tico immediately when we got Super Bowl said, sustainability is a big part of what we do. How can we work with you guys from a Super Bowl standpoint? And so Tico is one of our founding partners. I see Dave Pizzo and Florida Blue, what they're doing from a food insecurity standpoint is phenomenal, and that ties into our host effort, and we're so excited for them. So we appreciate everybody's support together as Team Tampa Bay. We're going to go forward forever with our community's 5th Super Bowl.
Well, he just said everything I was going to say. Except you just left out Tim Marks.
Well, Tim's wearing the same jacket as me today.
Oh,
so
yeah, twin brother.
Twinning.
I just want to take this time to tell Jodi you did a hell of a job putting this all together.
Thank you.
If y'all ever want to get something like really done, like get a hold of her. She will aggravate the living piss out of whoever it is until it gets done.
You got a couple of
So it's all in a good way. I thought I was the only person that texts people at 11:30 or 12 o'clock at night. Lord, good job, Jodi.
Hey, we were going to visit that panel of the entire summit, so I hope we achieved that. Anything else, Lizzie?
Just to echo Titus, thank you, Jodi, for organising and keeping us all in line. I'm sure it's like herding kittens a lot of the time, but you got us over the line, so thank you. And then my final message is support local soccer. We have Tampa Bay Rowdies right across the bridge. Every Saturday night at 7, pretty much, from March to October, and it's a good family fun, smoke, flags, bands, singing, all this stuff.
I would ask, learn more about esports. It's pretty fascinating. It's recognized as an official varsity sport in all colleges. There's over 250 colleges that currently have varsity esports teams. It's getting pretty active. It's actually also changing the shape of how college sports are moving forward because obviously collegiate esports athletes are making money. Which is pretty fascinating. They own all the branding of what it is that they put out there. They own all their content. It's a really interesting concept industry-wise. There's tons of opportunity for everybody to get involved. So if you don't know, it's a good time to jump in because it's right at the beginning. And thanks, Jodi, for including us and esports as part of this panel.
Wouldn't have been the same without you, girl. That is it.